Waiting for it to go live. It's taking its time. Might have to do something. It never takes. Oh, there we go. Our Legends of Broadcasting Week continues here at In the Money Media. You can find our chat with Tom Dirk in another video talking about his new book. Now, we turn our attention to a little bit of an early look at the goings-on in Saratoga next week, the Embrace the Belmont event. To talk about it here with us, among a few other topics. Very excited to welcome back to the In the Money airwaves, Donna Brothers. Donna, how are things?
Everything's good, Pete. I'm up in Saratoga now. We got up here a couple days ago. As you mentioned, we've got the Embrace the Belmont event coming up, so came up to get prepared for that. But the reality is we can't get here soon enough. So we live in Louisville most of the year, but we think of Saratoga Springs as our adult summer camp. And yeah, we always like to get here as soon as we can.
So this will be the third year in a row that summer camp starts kind of early with this and the Embrace the Belmont event. I know you being very involved in the community up there. It was something you wanted to do to take a little bit of a different angle and present racing a little bit differently to the community at a time when they're not used to having them there. Remind us a little bit about the genesis of the idea and how it's gone the first 2 years.
Thanks for asking, Pete. So the genesis was that we feel like there are a lot of people in Saratoga Springs who love the idea of horse racing, but they don't necessarily understand horse racing. And so there's business owners and professionals who have clients that they meet with Belmont Stakes week, and they don't even know which horse they like. They don't even know who's running in the race, right? So they don't even know where to begin to have the discussion of who do you like for Belmont Stakes. And so we wanted to put them in a position to be able to talk about the Belmont Stakes with some familiarity. Instead of just saying, well, I heard the Derby winner's coming back. What's his name? Right? Like stuff like that. So we really wanted the Saratoga Springs community to embrace the Belmont Stakes in the same way that the horse racing community does. And this is on Tuesday. So it's the day after the draw. The event is on Tuesday at the Universal Preservation Hall, who donates the space to us. So we're very grateful to them. And then we have two charity partners, Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga, the Saratoga Hospital Foundation. And so it's a fundraising event, but the fundraising element was secondary. The primary motivator was we wanted professionals in Saratoga and business owners to truly embrace the Belmont Stakes.
Great. I'll hit this one again at the end, but what's the best way for people to get tickets? And then I'm going to ask you to tell what they can expect, but where can they go to make sure if you're going to be in the area on Tuesday that you're there?
Well, Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga, it's on their website. Their web address is thsaratoga.org. So you can go there, click on events, and it'll come up and you can get tickets there. This is the 158th Belmont Stakes. So the ticket price is $58, homage to the 158. Also, you can get a VIP ticket option where you'll be able to come a little bit earlier. We've got a VIP room with dignitaries, our handicapping panel. Jena Antonucci is going to be there, the first woman to win the Belmont Stakes. And of course, Cherie DeVaux, the first female to win the Kentucky Derby. So they're going to be part of that VIP experience. And that ticket is $158, more homage to the 158th running of the Belmont Stakes and the third and final act here in Saratoga Springs.
It's great. What has the reaction been like by the community the first 2 years? Obviously, it's working if you keep doing them, but curious to get any specific stories or anecdotes you have about that.
Well, the first year we had it at the Racing Museum, and they were gracious enough to host us there, but we ran out of room. We had standing room only at the end. I think that event space holds 100 seated, and we had 139 people there. So we had a lot of people standing around the room, and so we moved to a bigger venue. The second year, we went to the Universal Preservation Hall, and in that venue, we can seat 400 people. So we're not going to run out of space there. But I do feel like it's been, it's literally a bigger event there, right? Because it's a bigger space and we have more room to do what we want to do, where we have the VIP room there. This year, we're going to have some fashion partners that are going to have a boutique style thing set up in the reception room. So we've got boutique owners in Saratoga Springs who've been offered to come set up a table and just put whatever they want out there. So there's 3 different rooms. You've got the event space where you've got the fashion partners there and the general bar set up. Then you've got the VIP room, and then we'll all move at 6 o'clock to the event space where we're going to have Seth Merrow from Capital OTB, right, and then Matthew DeSantis and Sara Elbadwi, both from NYRA, who are our expert panel of handicappers. They did it last year and they did a phenomenal job. And so I think it'll be, they do it. First of all, we know them well, and they know horse racing inside and out, but they also did a great job of simplifying for our audience. And, this is the group that we want to make sure that we're not talking over their head, that we're not saying things that already exclude them from the conversation. And I felt like they did a great job of making everybody in the room who already knows horse racing feel like they had something interesting to say. And for the newcomers, they said it in a way that they could understand it.
That's a gift. And I believe from the content that Seth does regularly, and also Matt and Sara, that they would be able to sit in that sweet spot where the new people are going to understand it. But I'd sit there and be thoroughly entertained because they're still going to be able to bring their insights through, maybe just in a way that uses a little bit less jargon that, like you said, might be alienating to people. So I love that model for this event. You mentioned about the charity partners, Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. Longtime listeners here have heard me go on and on about them and how much I admire their work, helping horses, healing humans. Also, the Saratoga Hospital you mentioned. I want you to talk a little bit about what these two organizations mean to you and why they're the perfect charity partners for Embrace the Belmont.
Well, I'll start with the Saratoga Hospital Foundation, because that doesn't seem like a truly logical fit, but it is, because the Saratoga Hospital has now partnered with NYRA and for the backstretch employee services team to provide services to backstretch workers. And so the Saratoga Hospital wanted to be more involved with the backstretch community. And we thought this was a perfect way to bring them in and introduce them to people. A lot of people didn't know that they were doing this. So it's a great way to bring them in and introduce them to people from the track, at the track. Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. I mean, what can I say about them? Anybody who knows them knows that the work they do is amazing. They use all horses that are retired and can no longer be ridden to work with all kinds of people. They work with veterans, they work with autistic individuals, they work with people who are having any sort of mental, relationship disorders, people who have traumatic experiences, and they do phenomenal work. And I'm going to have to bring my little guy into the conversation here because I've got my little buddy Jackson here for anybody who's watching. And I think everybody knows that animals bring levity and joy, and they disarm us in a way that people can't. And that's what Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga does. They get people who've been guarded for whatever reason to drop their guard and to let love in. And if they can do that, then lots of doors can open for them.
The thing that strikes me so much about the work they do, and they even have non-specific therapeutic programs where you can just go, the horseplay program, I think it is, where you can just go and spend time around these animals. And from a lot of the individuals I've talked to who have done the more therapeutic piece of it, there's people who I've talked to who have never really fully understood the concept of empathy before spending time around specifically horses, who are at once so majestic and powerful, but also needy. And the relationship and bond that gets created there can really change people's lives. And I've had the pleasure of seeing it up close. And that's the kind of work they're doing at Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. What do you think it is about horses specifically that seems to put that type of a powerful connection between people, especially people who might have not had the greatest time of things?
Yeah, sadly, some people are raised to believe that human interactions aren't safe. And they have good reason to believe that because their human interactions have not been safe. And then other people later, post-traumatic stress disorder is a real thing, and it's almost impenetrable from another human being. And so what happens with horses is that horses reflect what you bring. And so if you're afraid of horses don't know that you're standing there afraid of them. They just sense your fear. And then they think, what is it that we should be afraid of? There must be some sort of near and present danger because this person has fear. And so the person starts to realize that this horse is very sensitive to what they're feeling, and they start to notice what they're feeling. Whereas before, they're maybe not even paying attention to what they're feeling. They're just knee-jerk reactions. And so the horse requires that you become aware of the feeling that you bring into that relationship in order for the relationship to evolve, to unfold. And I think people just become more aware of what they bring. And so once they realize that they have to let their guard down, that they have to let their fear go, and they have to bring another feeling, then they start to access those feelings. And once they can access those feelings, they can take those feelings into other relationships. But I don't think they're able to access those feelings merely in the presence of other human beings, if in fact human beings have been the source of their torment.
That's really, really eloquent and well put, and is really making me think about that idea, maybe that somehow by being a herd animal, it changes the mentality, as opposed to whatever we predatory animals like humans. A herd animal going to get a whole different perspective, and it can change people's lives. We've got loads more information on Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. You can go directly to the website and buy tickets, as Donna suggested. You can also go to inthemoneypodcast.com/horses. We'll have links for the event set up there, and you can also just learn more about this work. And it's great to hear about the hospital and that connection, and why they're actually a very logical beneficiary for the event. I'm sure it means a lot to you to put this together, not only for the people of Saratoga, but also to benefit these charities.
Oh, absolutely. When we first started to think about the event, and by the way, my collaborators in this are Rachel Dunn, she's with Saratoga Racing, and also Stable Connect, and then Laura Samel, who has Stars Aligned Racing Partnership and Untamed Fillies brand that I'm wearing. When the three of us first started to talk about it, again, it came from the impetus of really wanting to bring people in Saratoga into the inner circle, but we knew we needed to have a charity partner. And there are 100 options nearby. No charity partner is going to say, no, we don't want you to do a fundraiser for us. But we narrowed it down to these two in particular ones because we felt like they were a good connection to the horses, the people on the backstretch, and the community also.
All right, now I'm going to make you talk about yourself a little bit. So you recently announced your retirement from your work at NBC, where you'd been, as far as I understand it, the only person with all 26 of their Kentucky Derby broadcasts. What I thought was interesting reading some of the coverage of it, Donna, that I wanted to ask you about, was the fact that it sounded like you decided this a while ago and more or less kept it a secret until recently. What was that like, sort of knowing that you're coming towards the end of something where the rest of the world didn't know?
Well, first of all, look at what just happened with FanDuel TV. I mean, if you work as a broadcaster in television, there's no guarantee that you're going to have a job 5 years from now. And so when I started with NBC, it was in 2000, and who would have thought 26 years later I'd still be there, right? I thought, well, this will be a good gig for a little while until they get tired of me. And then, I started with Charles C. Canny, Tom Hammond, Mike Battaglia, Bob Newmeyer, Tom Durkin, and all of them were gone after a while. And the only one left was Kenny Rice. He started the year after I did, covering the Kentucky Derby. And so at some point I was like, okay, well, at one point they will ask me to go, right? I'm gonna age out of this. And so I started thinking a couple of years ago, like, when do I want to go? What do I want that to look like? And I knew I wanted to, like, I felt to me like the finish line was get to age 60. 60 seemed like a good time for me. And so I talked to my producer about it 2 years ago, and Lindsay Shanzer, by the way, and I wanted to give her ample warning, because it's not like you can just put a job description on the website of, hey, we need an on-track reporter on horseback for the NBC telecast, right? So I wanted her to start keeping her eyes peeled on who she thought might be a good fit. And ultimately, that has come down to, for people who are curious, Andy Biancone for many reasons, and quite recently, because of the FanDuel TV situation also. So she's going to be available. I feel like people who've watched her love her. They connect with her. She's so passionate about horse racing. She's so enthusiastic. She has galloped horses for many years. Her father's a horse trainer. She's engaged to Keith Asmussen, Steve Asmussen's son. And one of the things that I said to NBC is, no, she's not a former jockey, but Andy Biancone knows more about the stories of the people on the backstretch than I've ever known, than anybody on our broadcast has ever known. And I think Andy's going to be able to bring more of those stories, but she also knows the jockeys really well. And so I think she's going to be a phenomenal fit. But yes, I've known for a couple of years, and I think Andy's going to be great.
Look at you! I'm trying to ask about you, and you're still talking about somebody else. You're such a pro. You're turning it around on me here. You've been aboard. You've been right there. First person to talk to all these riders after so many magical moments. I know this is probably an unfair question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there one or two that stands out when you reflect on your time in the saddle in this role?
Oh, for sure. Okay, let me just start by saying that anytime you're interviewing somebody after a race like that, once you penetrate the aura of their feeling, which is about a 3-foot radius, you feel that emotion that they're feeling. And so in the beginning, when I went from being sort of a jockey to a broadcaster, I still had jockeys in the jocks room I wasn't a fan of, right? Because we were competitors. But what I noticed right away is that even if it was somebody who I didn't really like personally, once I entered their aura of their feeling, I felt it too. It was contagious. I was happy for them. Suddenly I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world that's ever happened, right? But the ones that stand out for me were, Calvin Brell. He was always great, especially his first, when he won on Street Sense, and then on Mind That Bird at 50-1. And the day before he had won the Oaks on Rachel Alexandra. And then, of course, being there for the Triple Crown, that was the first in 37 years with American Pharaoh. I'm going to say right now, I wasn't a fan of that interview with Victor Espinoza, and not because of anything I did wrong, but because my very first question to him, he answered with thanking his sponsor. So I'm like, how did they train this guy so well that the very first thing he says is, oh, I want to thank blah, blah, which I'm not even going to get into, right? So that wasn't my favorite interview ever, but it was great to be there for that moment. And then 3 years later, Sweet Redemption, when Mike Smith became the first, not first, I shouldn't say, but the second in the last 30, at that point, 40 years, to win the Triple Crown on Justify. And Mike and I go way back. And so when I was an apprentice rider at Canterbury, Mike was a journeyman rider, and we became friends right away. He took me under his wing. He would watch replays with me, tell me what I could do better, how I could do it better. He made me a better rider, a stronger rider, and became a very good friend of mine. He and his wife, Therese, at the time, and I, when I rode up here in Saratoga in the summer, we shared a house, and we were all friends. And so to be there for that moment when Mike Smith won his Triple Crown meant a lot to me personally, because Mike's a good friend, but also anybody who knows Mike Smith loves Mike Smith. And then I'll say the interview with Jose Ortiz after the Kentucky Derby, that was phenomenal. I can't talk about it without getting emotional, just because it's still new, right? Everything happened at once. We had a female trainer win the Kentucky Derby, and then Jose was so good after the race. He was so emotional. And then to get me unemotional, I'll talk about my final interview. Paco Lopez, really? I love Paco. My final. I mean, as a person, I love Paco. To talk to Paco can be difficult. To interview him times 10. I talked to him about, even before they came to us, I said, Paco, I'm going to ask you about your late grandfather, because I know he meant a lot to you. I know he's no longer with us, but I'm going to ask you about that. I just want you to be ready for that. And so when I threw the question to Paco about your late grandfather, I know he meant a lot to you. And, he believed that you could be a great jockey even before you knew what a jockey was. And he's no longer with us, but I'm sure he's listening. What do you want to say to him? And Paco goes, no, he can't hear us. He's dead.
very literal mind.
Yes. So that was funny. That was a really, a comic relief to a career that has had many, many emotional moments, that not being one of them.
I don't want to push on the bruise too much, but I want, especially for some people who might not be aware of you and your family's, pioneering efforts for women in racing. I mean, that was wild to have Cherie be the first female trainer to win in your last year working. Is that what the emotion that came up before is how much of it comes from that specific idea?
Yeah, I think, and now here it comes again. Yeah, like we've come so far, right? My mother was one of the first half dozen women to be licensed as a jockey, and that was in 1969. And when I started riding in 1987, and people would ask me, like, do you feel like there's any discrimination as a female in a woman's world? A female in a man's world. My thought was twofold. Number one, it's 1987, people. That doesn't happen anymore, which I was probably wrong. But my mother started in 1969, right? So she's the one I felt like who had to deal with all that. But the other thing is I felt like it was my world. I didn't feel like it was a man's world. I grew up in this world. My brother, my sister, and I were all little track brats running around on the backside. And so Cherie winning that Kentucky Derby and becoming the first female to do it, it feels to me like it should have happened 50 years ago. But it happened. And it happened this year, in my last year. And I'm really grateful for that. And I felt like Cherie just did such a beautiful job before and after, just like Jena Antonucci did in 2023. They both did a wonderful job of representing the females on the backside, of which, as you know, Pete, there are many. Just they haven't won the races at the highest level and the frequency that we'd like to see yet. But that was an indication that we're getting there.
It was a wonderful moment, and I thought it just dovetailed so perfectly with your story that I had to bring it up. All right, next one.
You've been asked to see me cry again.
No, I feel bad about that, but it would have been a host fail to not go back there. You know that.
Yes, I agree.
I'll end it with a couple of softballs though. What's next? The one you've been asked in every interview you've done, but what are you looking forward to doing with the extra time?
Well, one of the reasons why I was in a hurry to get to Saratoga was because it's a beautiful place to get grounded. You can spend time in the great outdoors here in so many ways: hiking, biking, stand-up paddleboarding, go to the lake, go sit in a park and read a book. And so for me, the couple things that are first and foremost are I'm not going to be on the computer for 5 or 6 hours a day doing research anymore. And I'm going to get grounded outside, and I'm going to spend more time with my husband. My husband is been retired, Frank Brothers. He's been retired from being a bloodstock agent since 2022. And most people know he was a horse trainer. He retired from that in 2009. But time doesn't stand still. And I'd like to spend some quality time with my husband without being on the computer all the time. I'd like to get grounded in the outdoors. And after that, we'll see. I feel like right now I'm just in a recalibration mode, and I don't want to have a to-do list of anything.
I love that. I'm envious of that. You mentioned some of the things you do to keep physically fit. I will say, having the pleasure of spending much time with you in person over the years, maybe the most physically fit human being I've ever seen. What in the world? What is your regime? Is it more diet? Is it more exercise? What do you do? You could probably help some people out there by giving some info on your plan.
Well, for me, it started with when I became a jockey in 1987, I weighed 98 pounds. So weight certainly wasn't an issue, but I did realize quickly I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't as strong as my competitors, that's for sure. And so I spent the next year and a half, 2 years, I read all about health and fitness and working out. And I learned that it's a combination of changing the way you eat and also changing the way you work out. And so mostly I was doing cardio. So I had to start lifting weights, and I had to pay attention to the way that I ate to make sure that my food would be used to build muscle, as opposed to, I was 21 years old at the time. My body wanted to make a baby, so it wanted to make fat. So I had to get the body to cooperate. And so then, and I put on, over the course of the next year, I put on 6 pounds. So my riding weight was more like 104 to 105. And that was all muscle. And then I guess when I retired from getting on horses in the morning, when my husband retired in 2009, I felt like I got my whole morning back. I wasn't at the track anymore, right? So I'm a morning workout person. And so I get up every morning and, you know, I have a cup of coffee, do a little bit of emails, and then I try to get a walk in, and I do either some sort of high intensity interval training, weightlifting. Today I went to Pure Barre. Sometimes I do hot yoga. It just depends. I have to mix it up. I can't do the same thing day in and day out, or I get too bored. I like to ride my bike a lot up here in Saratoga. And I think essentially it just comes down to making sure that you're doing weight-bearing exercises and that you're moving the body all day throughout the day. So even if you're somebody like me for the last few years who's been in front of the computer 6 hours a day, you just have to take breaks and get some movement in.
I'm surprised you didn't mention a specific sport. I would think from the jockey days, that competitive fire that obviously exists within you would need some sort of an outlet. What do you do to channel that?
Yeah, I'm too competitive to do that. I did do some running for a little while. And I remember the first time, like I was in this 5K and my Fitbit watch hit somebody's elbow as I was running by, and she goes, ouch. And I'm thinking, like, in my mind, the first thing I thought in my mind was, it's a race. Get over it. Like, it didn't even occur to me to say, I'm sorry. I know. I didn't even apologize. I was just like, it's a race. And the reality is it wasn't even a race. It was a 5K. Most people were doing it to raise money for charity or something.
Well,
And so then 2 days later, also, I couldn't walk because I got myself I just hurt everything because I'm competitive. Yeah. And so I can be competitive. That competitive energy serves me well in group fitness classes. So I do group fitness classes because I am not going to let the person next to me do more repetitions or hang in there longer or whatever. But if I get into sort of competitive competitions, I don't take care of my body. I don't even hear my body anymore. So I don't do that.
That was a really fun rabbit hole. I'm glad I asked you that question. Folks, go check out Embrace the Belmont. We will make sure that the link is available at inthemoneypodcast.com/horses. You can also go directly to the Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga website. Donna, thank you so much for the time today. Really great catching up with you.
Pete, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you. I hope to see you at the event also, and I know I'll see you at Saratoga this summer.
No doubt about it. Thanks one more time to Donna. Thanks to everybody out there for subscribing to the In the Money Media YouTube channel.